cameras only have limited battery life, screen time.
No, they don't.
They inherently do. Everything in life is limited. How much that is a different conversation, but everything has a limited. You're limited.
Hello. Welcome to Quackalope. Today we're doing a debate video built around... Well, hi.
Hi. You can keep going. I like this one. You can leave the entire thing from the get-go. We're talking about battery life, screen time, your limited lifespan. We can keep going.
So do you want to introduce? You want to tell them what we're doing?
Sure, absolutely. This is going to be our debate series, our debate format. You can find a few of these. This actually originated over on Table Knots. We'll throw a link down below.
No. It originated with me.
Where?
As I accosted Max from Table Knots.
Where?
Well, on Table Knots.
Thank you. This originated on Table Knots and on the YouTube channel.
You can't give him credit for this.
We'll throw
and
a
then
link
you
down.
stole it.
We'll throw
what nonsense is this?
Do you want
no, I'm going to keep yelling over you.
You want to take credit for it?
No.
I think you can do that. In any case, originated over on Table Knots. I'll throw a link to that channel down below. Make sure to check it out. We've had a few of these by now, and we're going to keep having more of them, as you can see by this wheel. And by the way, make sure to keep this wheel alive by throwing in the topics you want to see debated.
Now, for context, we need topics that can actually be debated. Mm-hmm. I mean, the conversation around whether or not a duck is a swan...
Yeah.
Not very
Absolutely
engaging.
not. If you say whether or not chocolate goes well with peanut butter, we're just going to delete you and remove you as a user on our channel.
Pineapple on pizza? I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
The debate's settled. It's the best thing in the world.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Shall we begin?
Let's do this.
And guest chooses, right?
Guest chooses.
Oh, you're the guest this time. Best with.
Best with.
I don't know this one.
You don't know most of these?
Yeah, I don't.
Best with.
You have an inherent advantage off of the fact that you're selecting...
What? There is a way you can get around that.
Okay.
Come up with your own topics.
All right, excuse me.
Okay.
Excuse me.
In any case, moving on to this discussion. Best with is the conversation around the idea that board game companies put on their table, they on their games, they put on their games, this game plays 2 to 5 players. Okay? Now, the problem we have here is there's a few options, because
should they
games
include
that
no?
That's an easy argument.
Well, yeah, naturally.
Saying 2 to 5 players, best with 3 to 4, you can always have that conversation.
Okay.
That's easy.
I don't know where
but
we're going.
It's complicated. You can't just throw that in a box. It's more confusing to the average consumer.
Probably.
So the question is, do you include the actual capable possible player count, or do you just go with what the game is best with?
So you're saying, if you're saying game's best with 3.
Best with 3 to...
you literally leave nothing on.
No, I'm allowing room for leeway. Well,
let me know your side before I start arguing.
Well, we'll talk about that. Oh, yeah, that's a good point. I should probably do that. The room for leeway is the idea that a game obviously might be best with 3, but it's very, very, very good with 4. But it's really kind of suboptimal with 2. Then take that 2 off the box. And I believe they should take the 2 off the box.
That's what you're taking?
That's what my side is.
So establish your argument.
My argument is that a company should no longer ever put on a box what a game's range is. They should put on a box what that game is most enjoyable when you play it as.
Yeah.
That is the selling point of... I'll define my argument. So the selling point of a game, the selling point of a title is... the goal. What is the goal of a game? What is the goal?
Well, to get it to the table and play.
And?
Well, have a decent time.
Have a decent time. Yeah. So why would you ever put something on your box that will in any way encourage people to have a less than ideal time with the box? And the answer, the reason you would, is to sell more of them.
Sure.
That's not good for you. It's not good for the consumer. It's a short-term gain for a long-term loss. A long-term loss for the consumer, for the hobby, for the company. Everyone loses when you say your game plays with 2, and it does not play with 2.
Yeah. What about the games that don't play good at anything?
Oh, those games shouldn't exist either.
Okay,
that's
great. So that's half the industry gone.
Half the industry's gone. It's actually not really half.
Let's keep narrowing it out. I mean, there's a lot of games that play 1 through 5.
Yes.
And you would probably say 3's the best player count, or 3 or 4 would be the best player count, because they have an automata at
whatever it is. Whatever it is.
Who is the person that decides where it plays?
Ideally, the publisher who, if they've brought their game to market, ideally has playtested the game with multiple player counts.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have.
Yeah.
And various people with various player counts still want to know if a game is accessible to them. Are you saying that a family of 2 should never be able to buy a game and experience it if it only plays best at 3 or 4?
Absolutely.
Because the box... Why?
Why? Do you think this hobby is lacking games?
I don't think the hobby's lacking games.
Do you think that
I do think the experience of a game should be available to everyone that wants to enjoy it.
So you're arguing that the family of 2, the couple that are playing games together, you think their hobby is better served by having a wider degree of access to mediocrity as opposed to a lower degree of access to immense excellence?
No, I think the system that we already have is a fine system where the fan base afterwards goes on to things like BGG and make it as public as possible where the preferred player count is.
BGG is an excellent resource. What percentage of gamers do you think are on BGG?
Not most of them.
Oh, so that's not the totally.
I'm not saying that it is the only solution, but I think it is a better. I think the wider distribution of knowledge is a better solution than a publisher making an arbitrary decision that hampers themselves and restricts people from playing or buying their game.
I'll agree with you here. So what we should do is BGG.
Already agreeing with me?
To an extent.
Wow.
BGG.
Uncharacteristic of you.
As a resource. Sorry. BGG as a resource.
You want to cut that, or are we just going to
No,
leave
keep
that
going,
in?
keep going.
Okay, great.
BGG as a resource should be used to tell people that game that plays at 3 to 4 players, by the way, just so you know, there's also a 2-player version you can play with it.
So you're saying that the public should be made aware.
Sold on what the excellence is, and then they can have their modifications for the person who says, I want to play game X.
So we go from a average industry where 3,000 copies of a game sold is a success to one that prints it only plays at 4 players on the box, and suddenly 500 copies of a game sold is a success.
Do you think that the game will sell more or less based on the feedback of people giving? You know all those ratings on Board Game Geek of a 7.1 or whatever it is? How many do you think those will be a 7.8 if they're only played the way it's meant to be played? You're giving people a subpar experience and hoping it serves you in the long run?
I think your subjective view of meant to be played, I think, is also very hard to nail down. I mean, someone developed, like, let's take Stonemaier, for instance. Sure. Stonemaier always publishes a 1 to 5.
Yes.
It is in the requirement, it's in his motto.
Okay.
He will not put out a game that does not have an automata faction that allows it to play solo, and does not play up to 5 players, because that's the average family size. It's good marketing. It's a personal decision he's made. It also
still results in subpar experiences when people don't know what to get.
It also is designed in a way where people have different experiences at different player counts. There's some people that think... There's some people, like, for instance, I reviewed Pendulum, and I said it is great with the chaos at 3 specifically.
That plays at 2 players, right?
Plays at 1. It plays 1
But it plays at 2
5.
players, right?
Yeah, sure.
Would you recommend it at 2?
No, I wouldn't.
Oh, okay, fine. Because I bought it thinking it would be great for me to play. It's really unfortunate.
You know who would recommend it at 2?
Yeah.
Rahdo did recommend it at 2. So his experience with that game at a different player count... His experience at that game at a different player count is different from my experience of that game. Stonemaier asserted that all player counts function and work well for different types of players. Your subjective experience for even on BGG, you'll have 3 players recommended 37%, 4 players recommended 70%. Yes. No one's 100%. This game is only at... And so, are you cutting out... What percentage of people are you willing to cut out?
That's a good percentage. What percentage of people? That's a fairly reasonable question. So, on Board Game Geek, there's a category called not recommended. If you look at this scale, there's best with, recommended, and not recommended. Best with and recommended, fine. That's cool. The ideal experience versus the good experience, we can have that conversation. Okay. But there are many people who say certain experiences are not good at that player count. Now, the question you're asking, which is a fair question, is when you're a playtest, you have 100 people who play the game, you get their feedback on the various player counts, what percentage of people need to say it's not recommended for you to not release that experience to the public?
How many people are you cutting out?
It's a reasonable conversation. I think it's an excellent question. I don't know offhand. I'd say if 50% say it's not recommended, probably don't release it.
I mean, my hope and my assumption, though, would be if 50% say it's not recommended at 5 players... I would hope the publisher would listen to that and refine the 5-player version as opposed to just cutting it off the box.
That's fine, but then that's okay too.
You know what I mean?
That's not a problem.
Sure.
We're not arguing there.
No, I mean, we're not arguing there.
You're saying that, okay, the game should be better at 5 players. Okay,
I'm just saying I don't think a box should... If it's best at or plays well at 3... I don't think a box should only say it's 3 players. I think it should say the range that it can play at.
The range that it can play at.
The range that it can play at. Well, is subjective.
It is subjective.
It's too subjective.
Everything's subjective.
Who makes the determination, though?
Based on playtest, based on feedback, based on that conversation.
Which you don't get enough of until after a game's already in the public.
No,
which is why
you're not getting 100 plus
matters
plays,
more.
If you've put out a game that hasn't gotten 100 plus plays at each player count, you're probably doing something wrong.
At each player count?
Maybe at 50 plus plays at each player count. It has to be. If you're going to put on the box that plays at 5 players, how many plays do you need for you to know it plays at 5 players?
Certainly. I agree. You need to be playtesting at every player count. And I would say that publishers that aren't doing that are probably making a misstep somewhere. And it leads to issues like you're analyzing. I don't think your solution, which is to restrict the box number, is the correct solution to this. If you want to back up,
your correct solution is make the game better. Okay, I agree with you. And if you can't,
sure.
Of course, that's the obvious solution. Make the game better. Congratulations. This next debate on this channel is going to be, should games be good or bad? I'm going to take the answer, the games should be bad. Make them better. Of course. Once the game can't be better, once the game is not better, once you're putting out the game that 47% of your playtesters said, I had a bad time at 2 players, are you still putting 2 in the box? Well, 53% of the people did enjoy it.
Did 53% actually enjoy it?
Well, 47%, this is math.
40% didn't.
Yes.
Did 53% enjoy it?
10% said it's best with 2, and the rest said it's recommended with 2.
And you're willing to cut out the best with and recommended?
Absolutely. You chase people away from buying games. You chase people away from the hobby. You chase people away from the joy.
You also restrict the potential success for a title.
Yeah. Show them your other title that's great with 2. They can buy other games from you. If they buy your game at 2 players, you think they're buying their next game from you, just relying on your box?
I think your tactic, while I think is the right idea when it comes to the best consumer experience, best hobby experience as a whole, I think the resulting effect of it is less sales for certain games, which hurts the publisher. I think it is less incentive to refine and build a game that plays at multiple player counts. And I think if it becomes the industry standard, you'll have things where a game is only 4, and there's no incentive to create a solo mode. A lot of people really enjoy the fact that Stonemier Games always produces a solo mode. Even if it's not always great, it still allows you to run and function the game in a positive way. What is the incentive for a Stonemier game to have the Automata crew that some people do engage with every single one of his games, if he is going to leave that as just a BGG exclusive or I invested a lot of money into this.
I could hear the argument. I'll tell you why. I can hear the argument for someone saying, oh, this game is a 3 to 4 player game with a 2-player mode. I can hear that argument. And the reason being...
So we're getting back to the initial thing where it's like, should they say best at 3 to 4 plays 1 through 5?
No, you should say a 3 to 4 player game includes solo mode.
But then
what is the game? Games have an ideal way they are meant to be played.
Don't most people that see 1 to 4 though understand?
Not necessarily.
So you're saying just cut out the 2.
Possibly, if that's what it takes. Meaning a solo mode to a certain extent is
why is cutting out the 2 a less complex version of me saying just put a best at somewhere?
Ideally, putting a best at would, to a certain extent, solve it, but it gets too complicated marketing. What you're going to put on the box, every single box is going to have...
So does cutting out 1 and saying include solo. You're adding an additional line either way.
The solo mode is a tricky one, because even with solo mode, I am still, to a certain extent, of the opinion that there is such a glut of amazing solo experiences out there that buying game X with a solo mode that does not play ideally is still not the best concept of what you can do with your money and your hobby.
There's a lot of people that still... I understand that, but I don't think ultimately that's your or the publisher's decision to make. I think it's the consumer's decision to make where they want to invest their money. If they want to try a game at a solo mode, I think they should be able to. And if a publisher has invested time and resource into a design of a solo option, effectively, I think it should be as good as possible. But here's
effectively, this argument boils down to 2 stances. My stance is I want the consumer to have the best experience. Your stance is you want the consumer to have the agency around whether the experience the experience they have.
I want the consumer to have all the information you want the consumer to have. The question is, how do you go about distributing that? I don't think restricting the box title necessarily does that. I think it could lead
to an impasse. We're at an impasse. The only conclusion to our 2 stances is throwing it on the box.
I would concede on I would advocate for a 1 through 5 on Wingspan, best at 3.
Which is not the original goal of the argument, but it's the only way we resolve... Because I hear your point. Your point is give them the agency to make the decision they want. My point is do not give them the blindness to make a decision that is subpar for them. So can we all agree that putting 1 to 5 players on a box with no additional information is not good for the consumer? And it's not good for the publisher or the hobby?
1 to 5 players with no additional information...
If it doesn't play well at 2, let's say.
I think... Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we agree that's bad.
Yes.
The question is, how do we balance the aspect of giving people the agency to say, I want that game enough, I'm willing to have a subpar 2-player experience, versus putting just in that box.
I think the model that we have right now that distributes information through things like BGG once a wider subsect of the audience has played. Because here's the other thing, and you know this from playtesting, one of the core things that I do consistently is I ask publishers, what is your game? What is weak about your game? What are people criticizing right now? Where does it play best at? And some people are able to give me an accurate answer, and I appreciate when they do. It gives me insight into their title.
Yeah.
There's maybe 50% of our industry that genuinely say, I've been playtesting it all up and down the spectrum, and people are enjoying it everywhere.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
But you're saying it then it comes out and then something else happens, or you're just...
No, I'm saying it comes out and 3 players suck. there's a blind spot there that you can't mitigate around. I don't know until you have a wider public perception that is not attached to people who are personally involved. Playtesting is sticky anyway, with the bias that comes just from experiencing a prototype or experiencing a game at its heart that's still being refined. It's not the object of a prototype copy to determine exactly where a game is perfect at. There's still a lot of development that happens beyond that.
Not development. You're saying releasing it to the public and the public deciding.
Not I'm also saying that from playtest to playtest, there's still a lot of development. Out of 500 playtests, it may be only the last 50 that have a near-finished version of the game. All the other ones were giving feedback that changed the cycle of the game.
I hear your point. I won't necessarily disagree with it. I think lots of games are released with subpar playtests.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree, and I don't know how to solve for that. I don't think the solution is what you're advocating for.
So I think the solution ultimately is more information on the box. I don't think BGG is a solution. I don't think it is.
So you're going from you should restrict information to you should add information, I'm happy with.
I wanted to have the debate without that. I want to take that out of the debate, but I hear your point. Your point is give people the agency to make a bad decision, which I can't disagree with. I'm fine with that. So instead of let me just get this right. Yeah. Instead of restricting information in the box,
yes, you're coming over to my side, which is add information.
It was never your side.
That is my side.
No. Given if you
from the very beginning, that's the stance.
To be very clear, if you remove the possibility of putting information on the box, I still would rather people have the ideal experience than selling them on a meaning agency.
But I haven't removed that.
No, but you have. But you have inherently because if your argument is give people the agency they need to make the decision, that's fine. Okay. But putting just a player count on the box without additional information is not giving them that agency. That's not your side. You can only have your argument if you put more information on the box. If you take that out, I still am on my side.
I think
the better option is...
more agency could exist
yes.
in other places than the box. If you're talking about a blind consumer that doesn't have access to the wider world of the internet, who isn't watching us...
Practically speaking, how many copies of Castle Panic are there in the wild?
I have no idea.
There's like 100,000 plus copies.
Great.
How many people on Board Game Geek have it? There's like 24,000 who marked it as own.
I don't know the numbers. Okay.
That meaning most gamers are not on Board Game Geek.
Sure.
And the ones who are well researched, that's totally fine. They will look on Board Game Geek, they'll do their due diligence, that's excellent. I agree with you. I do not think it is a solution that avoids a lot of people buying games that give them subpar experiences.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I can't argue. I think you have me at a point where I can't go forward anymore.
Unless we just agree to compromise and go with what we said we're not going to do and just put more stuff in the box.
I think games should have a best at. I think it should be standard where it's like 1 to 5, best at 3, best at 4, best at whatever it really is best at, and it could be the reprint after BGG is like added in their own voice.
I
don't know when and where it is appropriate to do that, and I know it puts the publisher at a bit of a risk to like acknowledge weaknesses. But I
don't think a publisher wants to sell people on bad games. If you consistently give people good experiences, they will consistently come back to you.
I agree. I think the risk is if 30% of the audience love the solo mode of Wingspan, where's the line that you draw that says now Wingspan at one player 70% didn't recommend it or didn't play it?
Because that argument's an easy argument. Because the 30% who are losing out, they have dozens and hundreds of other games they can go to for ideal experience. You can't be concerned You cannot be concerned with the 30% about the potential loss they have when you have 60% who said it was not fun.
I'm not saying not fun. I'm saying didn't engage with or wouldn't recommend.
You said not recommended. I did not enjoy this.
Not recommended is different from just didn't engage with.
If somebody's willing to go on Board Game Geek and vote not recommended, that means that they did not have a good time with that player count.
If it's 70% not recommended, yeah, I agree with you. But I'm talking about 30% recommended.
Yes.
And then there's a ambient floating 60%, 70% that just didn't say anything.
Well, not technically the way the BGG system works. It's just divided by the number of votes.
Ish, yeah.
It just divides it. It's always going to add to 100%.
Yes, but that won't always be collected in one zone. Like the extra space that exists there, where it is and is not recommended.
It's either best recommended or not recommended.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, I mean,
I'm willing to compromise and let things be on the box. If we take that out, I prioritize.
I think you're wrong still. I don't think I have a good way to move forward with the argument if we take out the idea of just adding in for more information. I advocate for, and I think we both have come to the conclusion, adding something along the lines of 1 to 5 players, best at 2, best at 3, off of real fact, is where our industry should head.
I'd like to see it. I'd love to see it. I think it's a good idea.
It was a hard argument. This was a different one.
It's tricky.
And
I'll tell you why.
It's a nuanced argument.
I'll tell you why.
It feels like a tiny argument.
It's not tiny. I think this is a huge thing.
No, but I mean, like, compared to the other debates that we've had, this one felt much more precise without a lot of room to, like, play.
Part of the problem is sometimes in these arguments, for the sake of the debate, we take out the quote-unquote easy answer.
Sure.
The easy answer here is printed on the box. So our question, the arbitrary constraint we tried putting on until we got to this end conclusion, is the fact that, okay, great, we can have this argument about the artificial constraint we've put on the argument.
The best answer is the artificial constraint. And
that we took out.
It just is. And we took it out from the very beginning, and there was no way to not get back to it.
Because I agree with your point. Your point is agency. Your point is allow people to make decisions that are around their model. Yeah. And I think that's reasonable. But then we have to allow them to make the decision. That's the end conclusion. But I am a huge fan. I will not, for context, in general, I will not touch a game, very rarely, I should say. I will very rarely play a game at its not ideal player count the first time I play it.
Sure.
Subsequent plays, I'm willing to experiment. I'm willing to branch out. That first player count, that first play is my test of whether this game is going into my collection, whether I'm giving it a second play. And to that end, I mean, there's so many games around us. We are so privileged to have a ton of games. So why would I play a game that's going to give me a subpar experience?
The strongest argument from your side, and an argument I just didn't even, like, you said it, and then I was like, I'm not even engaging because I'll give up within 10 seconds. The concept of just that, the concept of a wider audience base purchasing a game for the best experience, and the impact it can have on our hobby if the subpar experience is where they start.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's detrimental. The idea of sitting down and playing a 2-player game with a brand new family that's never touched board games
buy Seven
before,
Wonders for the first time,
and
you're like,
sucks.
2-player Seven Wonders, you and I will have fun. Before Seven Wonders Duel came out, obviously.
Yeah.
And then you're like, that was okay.
And if they don't have that information, you've hurt our industry, you've hurt the consumer, you've hurt the publisher.
Yeah.
You've hurt every element of our space.
Yes.
You mentioned that. Is there a way for me to debate that? Is there, like, am I missing something? Because that's just, to me, that feels like, the only argument is the financial loss on the side of the publisher, and I don't care.
Yeah, the debate I could give there is that that argument would, the idea of losing a gamer, someone who's new to the hobby, I think that would mostly apply to lighter or gateway games.
Sure.
It's still an argument to be had,
sure,
but I don't think you have to worry about slapping the ideal player count on Twilight Imperium lest you lose the casual gamer.
Yeah.
If they are the casual gamer, they will play Twilight Imperium at the best player count, and they will say, I'm out. I'm out. I'm done.
No. They'll see it in the store for $100, pick it up once, and then go,
I'm out.
I'm
done. So
it's not the heavy. It's the lower ones, though.
Which there are a lot of.
But even then, that still matters.
Yes.
It's the Walmart shelf ones.
Yes.
That actually have really bad
player counts
on them.
Plays 2 to 6.
Because I don't.
No, it doesn't.
Because I don't honestly think things like TI are trying to trick people. Correct. It does function at its player count, and anyone that's picking up that game might play it at lower counts,
and they're probably on BGG.
But they know where it plays best at. Yep. It is the brand new consumer that we're hurting, and I cannot help but advocate for them. At the end of the day, I understand profit, I understand reach, but, like, if you want to grow our hobby, give people good games, because then they'll never leave.
Yeah, completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Anything we missed? Anything?
Let us know.
Yeah. It's an interesting conversation. I agree with you. This one is very localized. It's a very specific thing.
It is.
But I think it is a real thing. I think there are people who really will buy games, regret the experience, and for someone like myself, it's not as big a deal. I trade and sell my games. There are many people who don't do that. There are many people who buy a $50 game, and if they don't like it, they never are getting a cent back. They should be trading or selling. That's a different conversation.
One of the reasons why I always ask a publisher, what does your game play best at, is so that if I'm having a subpar experience, I can gauge it appropriately.
Yes.
And if I'm not having a subpar experience, or if I'm choosing what my experience is going to be, like you said, my first experience can be at the best player count, because they should be aware of that.
Yeah,
they should be. If they're not, it's a concern as a content creator, and if they are, it helps me be fair.
Yeah,
and helps me let the audience know. So, I mean, we're on the same page. I feel like it was a bit of a stalemate. We removed the easy answer. Both of us got back to the easy answer.
And that's where you have to end up.
And that's where we're going to be. So I've still won the majority of the debates. I'll call this a tie. Board Game Co. Still 0. Still 0.
Next video. Is Board Game Co. really at 0?
Yours still is. And with that, we'll see you next time.